Welcome to Lesson 4 of mySci Unit 23, Our Place in the Universe. In Lesson 4, students will answer the question, how does the appearance of the sun's path change over time? Students will analyze and interpret data on daylight in various locations throughout the year, and use models of the Sun-Earth system to explain seasonal patterns. They figure out that daylight hours are longer in summer months and shorter in winter months. The tilt-of-Earth's axis is the reason that some days are longer than others. This tilt and the revolution of Earth around the Sun causes the seasons. In the engaged portion of this lesson, students will consider their birthday, the season it occurs in, and whether they experience longer or shorter amounts of daylight on their birthday. Students should support their responses with reasoning. Students should discuss their responses as a group and then share out to the whole class. In the Explore portion of this lesson, students will consider how they could find out exactly how much sun there will be on their birthday. Additionally, students will predict when they think the most amount of daylight and the least amount of daylight occur. One option is to have pairs of students analyze sunrise and sunset charts. On the website, students should enter their location and the month, day, and year for their birthday. For example, I would mark my location as St. Louis and my next birthday as November 14th, 2019. A chart is generated and the highlighted portion indicates the time of sunrise and sunset, as well as the total elapsed time of daylight. Students should record this information on the Sunlight Hours Student Journal page. Next, students should line up based on their birthday and read the amount of hours of daylight on their birthday. They will describe any patterns they observe based on this data. Students should recognize that birthdays in the summer have the longest daylight hours, while birthdays in the winter have the shortest daylight hours. In the Explain portion of this lesson, students will determine which month experiences the most hours of sunlight and the least amount of sunlight, and how this compares to their original prediction from the Engage. Students will also begin to discuss why they think this pattern occurs. They will then watch a video to obtain information about what causes these patterns in daylight hours. Students should recognize that the Earth's axial tilt and the Earth's revolution around the Sun cause variations in day length over the year. Students will deepen their understanding using a second video and reading article. They will use these resources to complete analysis questions in their student journal. They will revise their prediction and construct a written explanation about why the length of daylight changes throughout the year. Students should recognize that in the Northern Hemisphere, days are longer in the summer months, from mid-June through mid-September. This is because the hemisphere is tilted towards the Sun, receiving more direct light for a longer period throughout the day. As the Earth revolves around the Sun, the Northern Hemisphere tilts away from the Sun. This causes winter, from mid-December to mid-March, with the Northern Hemisphere experiencing less direct light for a shorter period throughout the day. Next, students will access the duration of daylight and darkness tables. Students will need to specify the year, the type of table, the state or territory, and the city or town name. For example, I can compute a daylight table for the year 2019 for St. Louis, Missouri. Clicking Compute Table generates the data. Students will analyze the data on the 21st of each month. They will then use this data to create a line graph of daylight hours throughout the year for their given location. In the Elaborate portion of this lesson, you will probe students about how daylight varies throughout the year in various locations on Earth. To answer the question, students will analyze and interpret graphical data in their student journal. They will observe each graph and determine what seasons have the shortest days and what months correspond, what seasons have the longest days and what months correspond, and in which hemisphere the city is located. They will compare the data to determine any patterns that are occurring and consider why. Students should recognize that there are more hours of daylight during the spring and summer months and less hours of daylight during the autumn and winter months, unless you are in close proximity to the equator. In that case, daylight hours remain roughly equal throughout the year. Additionally, locations in the northern and southern hemisphere experience their longest and shortest days at opposite times of the year. In the Evaluate portion of this lesson, students will complete a formative assessment. Students will use a word bank to correctly define the processes that cause day, night, and the seasons, including Earth's rotation on its axis, the revolution of the Earth around the Sun, and the Earth's axial tilt. Students will also draw a pictorial model to illustrate why the daylight we experience changes throughout the year. By the end of this lesson, students will have explained how Earth's tilt combined with Earth's orbit around the Sun causes seasons and differences in amount of daylight in locations on Earth.